Assalamualaikum students. I hope that you all are doing well at your homes, and I hope that you are keeping safe and you had listened to my previous lecture. In the previous lecture, we had discussed about the meteorologists and this profession. So if you want to become a meteorologist, we had discussed about this in detail, and this was the chapter that we had finished. This was our first chapter, which is called Young Scientist. Now we are moving on towards a new chapter, which is called Living Cells. So cells basically are the building blocks of life. So cells are the basic building blocks of living things. So the human body, um, it is composed of trillions of cells, and all of them, they have their special functions. So basically, cells are the basic structure of all living organisms, and cell provides structure for the body. They take in nutrients from food, and they carry out different important functions. Okay, so so cells are the smallest unit of life. They are often called building blocks of life. So they are the basically most smallest particle which cannot be seen by human eye, naked eye. We need to have special instruments, special microscopes to look at a cell. So basically these are building blocks of life. Just like when you build house, you have these blocks and bricks, small bricks that make up house. Similarly, smells are the building blocks of life for human beings. Some organisms can have as little as one cell, others can have trillions of cells. So different living things, they can have one cell as well, and depending on the organism, or depending on the living being, they can, just like humans, we have trillions of cells inside your body, which make life, which give us energy, which help us function, which because of which we are alive. There are these different cells in an organism with most there are different cells in organism, with most having separate duties. So all the cells, they have separate duties to perform in a living organism. So let's see that what are these duties that are performed by different cells in different organisms. So there's single celled bacteria, there's nerve cell, there's skin cells. So all have these different duties to perform. So some facts about cells. So what are some facts about cells? Let's look at them. Most cells are too small to be seen without a microscope. So there are some cells, like in human body, which cannot be seen with naked eye. So you need to have a microscope which enlarges the image, and which will show you the image in a much larger scale. So with the help of that microscope, you can see those cells. The basic unit of function and structure in living organisms are cells. So basic unit of function and structure in living organisms are cells. So everything that is present inside living organism is made up of cells. These are tiny structures, as you can see. This cannot be seen with naked eye. This is microscopic pictures. So these are basic functions. So the basic unit of functions. All organisms are made up of at least one cell. So there cannot be any organism in this world which cannot have a cell. So every living organism which is alive, which is breathing, which need food and water and air for itself, needs cells inside its body. It depends on the organism how many cells that organism carries. So but it must have at least one cell in the body to survive. The smallest unit that carry on life processes is called a cell. So as we have already showed you, they're the tiny blocks. They're the smallest particles. They're called building blocks of life, and they are the smallest unit that carry on life processes. Okay. Multicellular and unicellular organisms are made up of cells. So multicellular means, multi means a lot of, so many cells. Unicellular means one cells. Organism made up of cells. So means multicellular means they're having multiple cells, a lot of cells. Unicellular means only one cell. No one knew cells existed before the 17th century. So obviously when there were less resources in the world, and the world did not progress that much. um, at that point of time in the before 17th century, because of the less development of science, we were not sure about the discovery of cells. So basically after the 17th century, human beings discovered that there are cells inside living organisms. Microscopes were invented in the earliest 17th century, and smaller cells were able to be seen for the first time. So, because with the help of microscopes, we see things which are cannot be seen with human eye. So, microscopes were invented, and then we were able to see these tiny structures which they were named cells. A Dutchman named Anton van Leeuwenhoek made the first handheld microscope. He used it to look at bacteria from his teeth. So this is a funny story that this man, he's Dutchman, his name was Anton van Leeuwenhoek. He was the first person. He got some bacteria in his teeth, and for that he wanted to see that what is gone into my teeth and why is it decaying, what is happening to my teeth. So for that he made a device which was named microscope. And then when he figured out, okay, you can see small structures through these things. So that was the first time the microscope was developed. The first person to study cells with a compound microscope was Robert Hooke. Robert Hooke. Okay, so he was the first person to study cells with a compound microscope. We are going to see that what is different between compound microscope and other microscopes. So in the next lectures, so there are different types of cells: single cell bacteria, nerve cells, skin cells. We should know the name, but maybe in the coming lectures we are going to see um, these cells in details, and what are these cells used for, these skin cell, nerve cells, and single cell bacteria. So okay, so now let's discuss something about the discovery of cells. um, Anton van Leeuwenhoek was born on 24th October and 1632. He was a Dutch biologist and microscopist. He began building microscope as a hobby by grinding lenses together. Um, Leeuwenhoek was made over 100 microscopes, no, sorry, 400 microscopes. The most powerful of these was able to magnify an object around 275 times. He was the first time. This was he was the first to clearly observe and describe sperm, cells, and red blood cells in animals and humans. And he was also the first to observe protozoa and bacteria. So this man, called Leeuwenhoek, he was the first person to. He was a Dutch biologist and microscopist. He was the first person to, who discovered the cells. He was born on October 1632, and um, he started building microscope as a hobby. He was not a scientist that he was doing it for study purposes, for other purposes. He basically did it for um, uh, by as a hobby. He started it. So he made over 600 microscopes. So um, the the most powerful microscope that he made was a microscope who magnified, means who enlarged the picture by 275 times. And uh, so he with the help of that microscope, he discovered these tiny little blood cells which are present inside the body. Our blood, it carries red blood cells. It has a lot of red blood cells. So and these are present in animals and humans, and different bacteria and different protozoa and bacteria, kind of bacteria. So he was the first man. Anton van Leeuwenhoek was the first one to uh, observe the um, observe different cells in our body. He was the first person to discover cells with the help of microscopes that he developed. Then Robert Hooke made up with the word cell. The word cell comes from the Latin word cellula. It means small compartment. He published his findings in Micrographia, which is a famous book. He described what he saw in cork slice using his compound microscope. He described units in plants, tissues as cells. So he was the first person. This is a microscope that he developed. You see with there is you place some blood in some small organism in this small part of organism in this slide that is present here, and then you see it from here, then the large picture will be seen here. From here you will put your eyes. So he was the first person who came up with the name cell. So this name, it comes from the Latin word cellula, which means small compartment. So basically these so he was the first man to come up with this word called cells, and which means this is Latin word which means cellula, and which means small compartment. Basically, cells are also small compartments. So he then wrote down a book which is called Micrographia, and he all whatever he findings he had, he wrote them and he stored them in this book. He captured them in this book, and so this was a compound microscope that he developed, and he studied in tissues in plants, and he said that these tissues in plants, he described them as cells, these small structures as cells. So this is basically the discovery of cells, and we have discussed what cells are. These are um, tiny structures which are the building blocks of life, and without it human beings and animals and other living organisms cannot survive. So different cells have different purpose in our body, so we're going to see that in detail, but as of now you should just be aware of this and you should learn about this. So who discovered the first cell, and who discovered the microscope. So without microscope, cell cannot be seen. So this is all for today. In the next lecture we are going to study more about microscopes, and we are going to study cells in details. Okay, so till then, take care and Allah Hafiz.